Psi Factor Chronicles of the Paranormal, edited by Dan Aykroyd. The Hunter. Time and place, late at night at a farm in Dexter County, Indiana. An old pickup truck stops near a tool shed, and George Collins gets out, whistling a tuneless tune. He begins to unload tools and put them in the shed when a ragged breathing comes over the pasture from a distance. George hears something and turns to listen. "Damn coyotes," he says, grabbing a flashlight and a shotgun. George moves into the field, shooing away what he assumes are coyotes. Then he stops. His face drains of color. Several cows lie in a bloody heap, their throats slashed and stomachs disemboweled. Then George hears movement on the edge of the pasture. He looks up to see the shape of what appears to be a wild beast illuminated by the full moon. Almost human-like, it flashes into the woods. Time and place. Later that day, several farmers and sheriff's deputies move through the forest in pairs. Sheriff Harrison Reed walks through the woods with George Collins. 10 head of cattle lost in 3 days, 5 last month alone, George says. You try and run a farm with those figures. There's an asterisk from the first time and place in Dexter County, Indiana. I didn't notice it before, but names, places, and dates in this book have been changed to protect individuals' privacy. Never noticed that. Anywho. I know George will deal with it. It's probably just a mean pack of coyotes, Reed says. For the last time, Sheriff, it wasn't no coyotes. You got that? How do you explain 3 cows cut down with their stomachs ripped out in 2 seconds? One creature alone did it. The farmers are still searching through the woods when Deputy Shepard warns Ray Velez, a local farmhand, not to stray too far from the group. Everybody should be in pairs, but Ray wants a shot at finding and killing whatever they're after. As he hunts through the trees, aiming his rifle ahead, he hears a noise behind him. He whirls to see something as it barrels down on him. Sheriff Reed, George, and the others continue their search when suddenly Shepard comes tearing in from out of the forest. "Sheriff, it got him. Oh, sweet Lord, it got him," Shepard yells, pointing the search group toward Ray's body. The search group runs forward, and strangely, Shepard hangs back, watching the others' reactions. Later, Sheriff Reed explains to OSIR case manager Connor Doyle what happened. "We went out looking for whatever was killing George Collins' livestock," he begins. "I thought it was just some bull coyotes or even some kids pulling a sick joke on the old man, until Velez was killed. Something ripped poor Ray to shreds not 100 yards away from one of my deputies." "Did you find anything out there? Any evidence?" Doyle asks. "We laid down traps all over the woods, but never caught a thing." OSIR investigators interview George Collins. "Something is killing my livestock," he says, "and it isn't some regular type animal. It's a werewolf. I saw it myself. A huge hairy man, sometimes running on all 4s with glowing eyes. Maybe you should talk to Gallon. He was around that night, always wandering around my land. Maybe he saw something." Dexter County Coroner Jackson Volstead discusses the autopsy results. The damage to Mr. Velez's body matches the singular bite and claw marks we found on the mutilated livestock. The victim's throat was slashed first so as to silence him as quickly as possible. This was followed by swift disembowelment. He died from shock and blood loss. I can't conclusively determine what could have caused this kind of mutilation. The next day, OSIR physicist/statistician Peter Axon and L.Q. Cooper, OSIR zoologist, walk into the pasture where George Collins first found his dead livestock. They see a decomposing cow surrounded by flies. Approaching the animal, Cooper pulls out a pair of rubber surgeon's gloves and puts them on before handing a pair to Axon. "These incision marks are extraordinarily jagged," Cooper says. "Jugular severed just below the neck." Cooper reaches into the stomach of the cow and feels around. "Remarkable," he says. "This animal has no heart. It's missing." Time and place. On the industrial outskirts of town the next day, Doyle, Donner, and some other operatives get out of an OSIR vehicle and start looking for Gallon. According to our information, he's apparently a drifter, no fixed address, Doyle says as they reach a wide alley between two warehouses. Several drifters stand around oil drums, warming themselves with the fires. The OSIR operatives fan out in twos and threes to talk with them. A few start to move away as Doyle and OSIR psychobiologist Lindsay Donner approach. Then Doyle sees a dark, heavy-set figure in a dirty overcoat turning the corner and entering the alley. "Are you Gallon?" Doyle asks as the other drifters back into the shadows. "I'm really very busy right now. It's a bad time, actually," Gallon says. "Please, it'll only take a minute," Donner says. "For you, pretty lady, 5 minutes," Gallon says. "There have been some livestock killings out on the Collins farm. Do you know anything about it?" Donner asks. "The locals say that they've seen you there wandering through the woods," Doyle says. "We aren't going to charge you with any crime. We just want to know if you saw anything unusual," Donner says. "Just fresh air, trees, birds, the smell of real food, that's all. It's public land. I have rights." "A man named Ray Velez was murdered out there last week," Doyle explains. "If you remember anything we should know, you can contact us through Sheriff Reed." Time and place. Meanwhile, Axon and Cooper inspect the area of the woods where Ray Velez was killed. The investigators are at various spots in the clearing examining the site. "I'm thinking about the autopsy report," Cooper says. "All the cattle were found missing their hearts, but Velez, the man who died, our pathologist said his vitals were left intact. Whatever attacked him was out to kill, but it didn't want a trophy." "You think it was a different killer?" Axon asks. "The method and claw marks match, but I think the reasoning behind Velez's murder might be divergent," Axon says. "Animals attack for 2 reasons," Cooper says. 1, for food. 2, to protect their territory. I think whatever this thing is, people came too close for comfort, and it felt threatened. Just then, an investigator calls them over to a fresh single-file animal tracks in the mud. "Unmistakable, you can tell by the paw pad formation," Cooper says. "Canis lupus, wolf." Cooper and Axon follow the trail of wolf prints through the woods. Slowly, the prints become those of a barefoot human. Doyle speaks into his recorder. "Case log update. We have completed the initial phase of our investigation. All evidence points to a violent, unpredictable life form of tremendous strength and power." In the mobile lab, the main screen shows the altered footprints Cooper and Axon found. Psychological assessments of the witnesses reveal strong paranoia. "This community is frightened and angry," OSIR psychiatrist Hendrick says. "Lab reports say the wolf and human prints are authentic," Doyle adds. "If it is a hoax, it's a damn good one." "Our psychological profile shows that this could be the work of a psychotic individual suffering from a clinical psychological disorder known as lycanthropy, when the subject believes he's able to become a wolf," Hendrick says. "I don't see how the claw and bite marks could possibly be man-made," Cooper says, confused. "There is also an epidermal condition known as hypertrichosis, when someone has hair coming out of every pore in their skin," Hendrick says. "I don't know if hypertrichosis explains some psycho ripping the hearts out of half a dozen cattle and murdering a farmhand," Cooper says. About an hour before sundown, Axon and Cooper, equipped with night vision goggles and thermal cameras, move toward the woods. They hide in some underbrush overlooking the pasture. George Collins and Sheriff Reed join Donner and Doyle nearby. "You sure you know what you're doing? There's a lot of people out here waiting for something real deadly to wander by," Reed says. "Just you take care of this nice lady," Reed warns Doyle. He heads off. "Nice guy," Doyle notes. That night, Sheriff Reed drives his Jeep along the dark county road. Seeing something, he slows to a halt and gets out, noticing the freshly killed carcass of a mutilated cow. Reed bends down to look closer. Reed walks back to his Jeep and gets in the driver's side, leaving his door open. He calls for the dispatcher on the radio, but his voice trails off as he senses the presence of something. "Oh, Lord," Reed says as a creature leaps upon him with lightning speed. The creature rips Sheriff Reed to pieces, and his bloody body falls onto the road. In the mobile lab, Doyle hears the dispatcher trying to reach Sheriff Reed over the radio. Worried, Doyle leaves to look for Reed, whom he finds mutilated in the road. Time and place. A couple of hours later, Doyle, Connor, Cooper, Axon, and Hendricks meet for a round table. Cooper, your report mentioned the possibility of this creature reacting to an invasion of its territory, Doyle says. Possibly, Cooper says, but the kills have been expanding in location. And part of this doesn't make sense. Wolves hunt in packs. This creature seems to hunt alone, Cooper says. But kills like a wolf, Donner says. All kills, both human and animal, occurred during the height of a lunar cycle, which corresponds to ancient werewolf legends. 2 days left to full moon, Axon notes. It pulled that cow from a neighboring farm and left it on the road for someone to find, Donner adds. It laid a trap. That evening, Doyle moves through the lab as investigators man consoles and view scanning monitors. Donner and Axon are at a scanning post on the edge of the woods. To tell you the truth, Donner tells Axon, I don't like having to carry weapons. They make me nervous. They're just there as a precaution. Doyle's being extra cautious, Axon says. Donner suddenly points to a tracking scanner. The flashing light on the screen blinks, accompanied by an increasingly fast beeping. Axon and Donner turn to see a dark shape in the underbrush, then it's gone. Doyle notes movement too and alerts Axon and Donner through the comlink. Doyle's monitor shows an image of the creature as it indistinctly flashes through the field. It runs low to the ground and incredibly fast toward a group of livestock. Nearby, a wolf's howl pierces the night. Donner tries to pick up the figure on her night vision goggles again. It's moving too fast. I can't lock onto it, she says. Axon turns as the creature claws at his face. Falling back, he clutches his head. The creature knocks over Donner, who loses her night vision goggles. As she gets to her feet, trying to keep calm, she looks out into the dim night. Peter, Donner whispers, slowly reaching for her gun. The creature closes in on Donner again. It looks at her for a moment. She recognizes the longing in its eyes of humanity. Then, snarling, it leaps. Donner swiftly raises her gun, firing repeatedly at the creature, which howls in pain as the bullets find their mark. It rapidly shuffles off toward the woods. The investigators leave the lab to search in the forest. Axon sits up groggily, his forehead bleeding profusely. He smiles grimly as he gets to his feet. Nearby, the creature's hairy hands claw across the field. Increasingly weak, it breathes more raggedly, then it slumps, finally dead. Slowly, its wolf-like hands become human. A formation of OSIR operatives in night vision goggles moves through the field in a sweep formation, and one yells that he's found the animal. Doyle and Donner run over. On the ground lies Gallon, the drifter. Bullet holes cover his chest and blood bathes his back and neck. Doyle gives a final case log entry. An autopsy on a transient known only as Gallon reveals that the bullets in his body match Donner's gun. As well, partially digested livestock organs were found inside his stomach. How Gallon transferred into a beast-like creature remains a mystery. All livestock killings in this county have stopped since the end of this case.